Here's Brody Brazil.
Okay, a hockey video. It's been a while. I'm excited to be back. I can't wait to get into this. But it's also kind of weird timing, right? Because the Stanley Cup final, it's right around the corner, but it seems like ages ago since the Sharks played their final game of this past season. So what I want to do here with so many things on the table looking back and also looking forward is a State of the Sharks video here for summer of 2022. But first, please subscribe. Please subscribe. Do you like the organ music? I did that for you, right? So the least you could do for me is subscribe to the channel if you're not already, but I suspect you might be, and I appreciate all the support. I'm trying to grow this thing out for all of you. Okay, so let's get into this. A multitude of different topics, but probably the biggest thing on everybody's radar right now is a new general manager for sure, but maybe a new structure? I really don't know how exactly this is going to play out because the list of candidates seems very long, and that's a good thing. They're going to take their time in getting this right, and why wouldn't you, right? Your last man on the job was there for 19 years. You would be so lucky to pick the next right person to last that many years all over again. But I only see this. Like, I don't speculate on names and rumors and back and forth, but I only see this happening one of two different ways. The first way is this. You get a new general manager installed. That person utilizes the existing scouts and coaches and front office staff. So basically, you're just kind of pulling one piece out and putting another piece back in. That's possible, and I think the Sharks are well suited if that is going to be their strategy. Just kind of a one-for-one. So that's sometimes how it does happen. But then there's also this across all professional sports. You bring in a new general manager, and during the interview process, they say, hey, if I'm going to be here and do this right, I need my people with me. So sometimes that person brings in their own preferred front office and staff and maybe even a brand new head coach. And I do want to say this for Bob Boughner because it just needs to be said. He has endured some of the most interesting times in franchise history. The pandemic going on, shortened season, a couple players departing, the situation of Evander Kane, not really up to him necessarily how this plays out, but when in sports do you take basically the best player on your team from last season and just realize they don't work out for your group anymore, and it's better to separate that? I mean, there's so many things that Bob has been through, and I think just rallying the troops and keeping the culture going, keeping a positive direction going has been an accomplishment enough. It's been hard to judge him by the same standard that we would other Sharks head coaches over the years. So I just want to make that clear. I want him to keep going. I want him to continue this opportunity. I do think he's had several years now, but they have not been normal years and they've not been normal circumstances. So I see both sides of it, but I definitely want to throw my defense, I guess is what that is, in there for Bob Boughner in terms of everything he's gone through as a Sharks head coach. Okay, the new GM, whoever this person is, I mean, they have so many decisions to make. We'll talk about goalies in a second, defensemen in a second, but the new person has to come in and make decisions on all these different names. Do you bring them to the Sharks next year? Do you just see how their training camp goes? And that's hard, right? Because this person, if they really are new and they're really not familiar intimately with the organization, they've got to see all these players. They now have to understand the background, the capability, the true scouting report on all these players and help make decisions on what to do with them. That's not easy, right? You're a fan, right? I'm going to tell you right now you are GM of the Columbus Blue Jackets, okay? So you might know who's on their team. You probably do. You're a good fan. Do you know what their AHL team is like? Do you know what their ECHL team is like? Do you know what their pipeline is like? Have you seen any of their... Right, so whoever is jumping into this Sharks job, I'm just going to say it, if they are a totally external person, I don't know how many of these names are completely on their radar, like they know what to do with all these names. So they'll get to the decision-making process. They'll work with the coaching staff, whoever that is. They'll work with all their people to figure this out. I'm just saying this person comes in with some tough choices to make. And I think it's these ones that are the most important, and they're the hardest decisions to make because these players, a lot of them don't have hardly any to no NHL experience. You really have to judge them with the eye test and with trust. So that's something to think about for the new GM. Here's something you know about the Sharks. Tomas Hertl, Timo Meier, they are here and they are now. I mean, Tomas is here for a lot more years, but the point being is that you do have something to build around. And I don't mean to not talk about the Brent Burnses and the Logan Coutures or anybody else that had a productive season. I like what I saw from Barabanov, but these two are at really good spots of their career. For Tomas last year, played in every game, 30 goals, 34 apples, 6 game-winning goals. Timo Meier, 77 games played, had COVID for a bit, had the 5-goal game against the Kings, so that kind of, weighs this differently, but 35 total goals on the year, 41 helpers, 8 game-winning goals for number 28. You have something right there to build around. Now, I'm not saying this is enough for them to be a great team next year. No. This is enough to have players to build around next season. So looking back as we're doing, assessing the present as we're doing, and also looking ahead, there are a lot of other teams that are in a similar spot to the Sharks, but they don't have these two guys, or the others, but they don't even have these two guys. What are we talking about? 65 goals combined right there. That's a lot of points. It's a lot of durability. That's a lot of your top 6. That's a third of your top 6 taken care of right there. So the Sharks do have that, and I do want to point that out. But where did the team fall short last season? You ready for this list? How long do you think this is going to be? Only a couple of things here. Lack of scoring, lack of depth. They honestly did not go on any good extended runs. They did win their first 4 games of the season. Remember that? That was their longest winning streak. Did they get to 3? I think 1, maybe 2 other times. I think 1 for sure, and 2 a handful of times. But, I mean, you got to have at some point in your year, you go on a 5-game streak or a couple 5-game streaks. To go on 4 once at the very beginning, well, I'll get to all my points here. They never had a lot of good runs. And then goalie injuries all season long. Well, not at the beginning, but maybe after November. It was Reimer hurt, then Hill was hurt, then Reimer was hurt again, then they couldn't use Hill and went out and got Kahkonen. We'll talk about that in just a second, but in the same way their team never got to get on a roll, you really couldn't utilize that tandem, that 1-2 punch of Reimer, Hill. Oh, Hill's hot. Hill. Now let's get Reimer in there. Reimer's hot. Reimer, then Hill. Then we'll hit you with, you don't even know what's coming. And our back-to-backs are taken care of. Honestly, the whole second half of the year, they did not have a 1-2 punch of goalies. It was literally 1-1-1, 2-2-2-2-2-2-2-2-2, 1-1-1-1-1. It was just like that. So let's go back to the top of this list, though. I'm not here to say that the Sharks' goaltending was really bad or their team defense was really bad or a lot of aspects of their game, if you want to do it positionally, whatever, but they just did not score enough this year. They got into some scoring ruts. They only got it from a few places. They just did not get it on a frequent enough basis. Yeah, 2 or fewer, they were the ones on the wrong side of 2 or fewer. I'm not going to oversimplify this and say that's the only aspect of their game that needs improvement, but to me, if you're talking about what's the number one way they fell short last year, it's lack of scoring. A big part of that is lack of depth. And sometimes you had players in the top 6 getting those top 6 minutes that maybe were better suited for a 3rd or 4th line role, but the team needed them in that spot. And then it opens up doors for, the most rookies making their debut across the league. The Sharks had that claim this year. So now you're testing, successful AHL players in the NHL. You want to give them this shot, but they're used to being a top-line power play scorer down there, and now all of a sudden you're putting them in a 4th line role. But that's what the team needed, right? That's what the Sharks had to do. I think specifically when I say lack of depth, I don't even actually mean the blue line. I think the team's defense core and their structure and their pipeline and their personnel structure, I think they were in pretty good shape last year. I still think they will be next year and moving forward with the D-men. And look, when I say lack of scoring, they needed more from the blue line too. You know, you needed more of a Karlsson and from a scoring output as much as anything else. We'll get into that in a second too, but scoring, coming from different places, and depth, all kind of the biggest issues right there. And obviously that leads to not going on sustained runs. And yeah, they had 2 huge losing skids, which we will discuss later, but no real good runs to go along with it. Okay, let's talk about these 3, Burns and Karlsson and Vlasic. And you know what's crazy? Going back to when the Sharks acquired EK65, I remember thinking this exact thought. Wow, this is crazy, because which 2 of these 3 are they going to pair together, you know, as kind of like a real high-level tandem? Or what I really thought they might do is say, okay, we'll split everybody apart, and for all of the 60 minutes of every Sharks game, you're either going to have Vlasic out there or Karlsson out there or Burns out there on the ice. You can have one of those 3 out there the entire game every night. What a luxury that will be. But quite honestly, it just never really turned out that way for the Sharks. And I'm not here to point fingers at any one of these 3 individually. I'm just here to say that, you know, what the team was hoping for, what we all thought, what I thought was going to be a huge difference maker, this trio, it never kind of panned out to be exactly that for one reason or another. Now, as I combine these players, this is a group thing here, these 3, $26.5 million cap hit, they all have different but respective clauses with their contract, either no move or no trade clauses. They're all in different places in terms of contributions or their career or how long they've been around the Sharks or not. That all different people, all different skill sets, right? So that's obvious. But my question here is, will the Sharks make a move to split up this trio? And how would they do it? I have no clue. But I think that the biggest question is, do they have enough blue line depth if they're going to part ways with somebody here? I take no pleasure in suggesting this, bringing it up, talking about it, analyzing it. I really don't. I want this to work. And as of right now, this is still under contract. But I also don't know if they need flexibility, and maybe in order to get something back to change the structure of the team, you need to give up something that you also like. Maybe this is part of it. But do the Sharks have enough blue line depth if they don't have one of these names? And I think it's only fair to say they probably do. They probably have enough to cover without this trio. I know, I get it. People are talking about this. This is the number one thing on everybody's radar. What are the Sharks going to do? To me, tremendous value individually with all of these players individually. But from a trio standpoint, I'll be interested to see. And this is one of the biggest personnel things, I think, to watch for in this upcoming summer. There's also another trio to talk about here, 3 goalies. That is kind of a crowd right now. And James Reimer, you brought back in for the second tour of duty, 46 games this past year, played through a couple injuries, almost got that 20th win. Man, I wish he would have got that. A 2.90 goals against and a 9.11 save percentage. One of their most valuable players, most certainly one of their most consistent players all season long. You kind of knew what you were going to get from Reims, and I feel like for the most part, the Sharks did get that. They also brought in Adin Hill prior to last season, and unfortunately injuries kind of shut him down way earlier than anybody would have wanted at all, but 22 games started, 10 wins, a 2.66, and a 9.06 save percentage. I think the hardest part about this, and I'll also show you here Kahkonen stats, he was acquired before the deadline from Minnesota, so he did get his 10 games in, and then I thought that would be a number that the team would try to get him to just evaluate him. 2 wins, a 2.86 goals against, and a 9.16 save percentage. But I don't think the Sharks, and look, in the same way we just talked about 3 defensemen, I don't know how it's going to play out. I'm pretty sure that they can't go into next season with these three names. But the hard part is, did you see enough of Adin Hill and did you see enough of Kahkonen to really make a decision if it's one of those two to move or if it's those two to keep and to take the value that you have in Reimer and place that elsewhere? Reimer and Hill under contract for next season. Kahkonen is an RFA, so you'd have to get that deal done. You'd have to sign him, maybe move him after that. But again, this is a tough scenario and situation, and there's not anybody that really stood out far and above the rest. Like I just said, Reimer, most consistent, most known commodity here. But what do you do after that between Hill and Kaapo Kahkonen? I just know that three in this situation, it is a crowd. All right, losing Skids and overtime losses for the Sharks this past season. And you could kind of draw the line here. I mean, literally as the calendar year turned, look at the Sharks in 2021, 17-14-1. They had a winning record. Yeah, they had a -5 goal differential, but overall, their October, November, and December with COVID, with everything else going on, they're pretty good. It was as soon as 2022 hit, the 15, 23, and 12 overtime losses. We'll dive into that in just a second too. But now you're at a -45 goal differential. You could really see the trend of this season. I mean, we could break this down in 10 different ways, but this is the easiest one for me. In 2021, pretty good. 2022, kind of really fell apart, in addition to some of the losing Skids that they had. But here's another frustrating part about this season. We talk about wins and losses. How did the Sharks lose 3 of 4 to Seattle? The expansion Kraken. How did that happen? At the same time, they won 3 of 4 against the Calgary Flames. I'm going to say, how did that happen? That's disrespectful, but, well, maybe it's disrespectful to Kraken to say, but their expansion. It was a hard Sharks team to figure out, playing up to the level of some teams, playing down to the level of others. Now, that's not completely surprising, all things considered, but that's something that, good teams don't do that. You know what to expect from good teams, and hopefully the Sharks can be a little bit more predictable in that regard moving forward. 13 overtime losses. That's the second most of any NHL team. So is it deceiving to say, well, you lost a lot of close games or games that were decided in overtime? And you remember at one point, this includes shootout too, the 13 OTLs, but they were 6-0 in the shootout, in overtime. And then they lost their next 7 straight. They were 6-7 in, I think that's how it went. Long story short here, you're looking at a team that lost a lot of close ones at the very end, and that might be misleading. Maybe that could have earned them some more wins, but certainly the overtime losses is something that hurt them. But the real thing that skewed their record this year was a 7-game skid in February and a 10-game skid, which, if I'm correct, was the third longest in franchise history at the end of the season in April. So that's 17 losses out of all your losses right there. That's hard to come back from. And when you tie that in to the lack of any sustained runs, right, there goes your balance right there. So those things need to be thrown into the equation. Those things need to be avoided for next season. Okay, state of the Sharks. We've talked a lot about the team and players and moves and front office, but how about the fan experience? I really want to put this on your radar. This is an important thing. The next few years are going to be critical for SAP Center, as downtown San Jose has all these developments planned, not necessarily in a certain sequence. Can the building still be accessible? Can parking be available? Ingress and egress? Can this still be a great experience as it has been for essentially 30 years? Will construction change that? Will rezoning change that? I hope not. And it's still out there that the public can have its voice and make your voice heard. So I want to put this on your radar. If we're talking state of the Sharks, where they play, and the building, honestly, is always going to be taken care of. It's always going to be upgraded, which, oh yeah, by the way, they're getting a new video board for the upcoming season. More on that in a second. But I want to put this on your radar. It's important to know right now that it's a pivotal time for this building to stay the easy-to-get-to experience that it always has been amidst everything else that's being planned in the downtown region. But yeah, the Sharks are always going to try and take the next level, the next step, a new video board. They're always they worked on the ice system during 2020. They're always upgrading the building experience. And yeah, SAP Center is among the oldest barns in the league. I hesitate to even call it a barn. When you walk in there, the floor is still polished as I remember it the same day I walked in there in 1993, right? They really keep the building up to tip-top shape, and they're always adding to it. So I just want to point that out, that I commend the Sharks on doing that. But at the same regard, right, and this needs to happen, we've kind of felt like maybe the home ice advantage has slipped a little bit away at the Tank. Is it a chicken or the egg thing? Is it you don't win a bunch of games there and then the excitement is also not there? How does it happen first? I'm not here to have that conversation. What I'm here to say is you want to get it back. You want to have 17-5+ there on a nightly basis. You want that building to be so intimidating like we know it has been, like we easily know it can be again. Obviously, the team and their success has to be part of that too. But that has to be something to aim for moving forward. And then I also want to point this out, separate video on my channel, Tech CU Arena, the brand new home of the Barracuda. It's opening in August for the start of their season. That is going to be a tremendous addition for any Sharks fan. You get to see their top minor league affiliate in a brand new, intimate setting. It's going to open the doors to more people to grow the game of hockey. You're probably a dedicated fan watching this video as long as you have, but just know what a difference Tech CU Arena is going to be for the Barracuda, for youth hockey, all of the above, and the fan experience over coming decades. Okay, playoffs. Again? Why did I put the question mark there? Why did I also read that like Ron Burgundy? Well, this is the third straight season for the very first time that the Sharks did not qualify for the playoffs. They made history, yeah, and not in a good way. But in the same way I said they need to get a home ice advantage back in the Tank, this group, right, this current group of Sharks, it's not at all like the 2019 Sharks, the 2018-19 Sharks that last went to the playoffs. So this I'm calling it a new group. It's some of the same players, but not a lot of the same players. This new group needs that return feeling. The new group needs success. They need a taste of that. They need to go back to the playoffs. They need to understand that. As much as the fans do, yeah, the fan base also needs something reinvigorating to rejuvenate them, to refocus the fan base. But the players need it. The fans need it. And quite honestly, that should be the goal, right? To just get back there. But I also want to point this out too. You want to build your franchise for those annual appearances again. And I know for most of the 2010s, people would get frustrated because they say, oh, this is the year, and then it doesn't happen. But think now, though. Think here we are in the future. Look back for a second. You would rather have all those years of being competitive than kind of where the team has found itself in the last 3 years. Abnormal years, but nonetheless, years and seasons that they did not qualify. You want to go back to, hey, we're punching our ticket every year. We're giving ourselves a chance every year. So I want to make this clear. You want to build for the playoffs again. Yes, absolutely. But what has to come with that is you're back every year. You're giving yourself a chance every year. Ha! Nice sound effect, Brazil. Well, that must be the end of the period or the end of this presentation. So that is my state of the Sharks here in the summer of 2022. Tried to touch on most of the things I think are interesting surrounding this team, but let me know, did I miss something? Do you want to add something? Put that in the comments section below. Thanks for staying tuned here to my YouTube channel during the summer. Again, subscribe if you don't already, but more Sharks content to come. As news happens, as there's a new GM, as there's any trades or deals made, we'll talk about it right here on this channel.